Hello, what's up you guys? On today's video, I am just gonna get right into it and I'm going to give you my personal experience. You guys probably already know that I'm a real estate agent in the Reno market. However, at this time, I'm also currently potentially a buyer and a seller. So I'm gonna share with you some key insights that I'm seeing as my husband Ryan and I are both looking to buy, and that would mean obviously that we would have to also sell the home that we currently own. If you've been following along and watching my market updates every month, you probably already have some insight into the fact that this market is incredibly challenging, and it's challenging for both buyers and sellers. Currently, at this very moment, we are kind of at a balanced place wherein the market frankly just sucks for both sides. However, I do predict, and we're going to get further into this later in the video, so stay tuned, but I do predict at some point in the near future, the scale is going to tip a bit in the favor of buyers. So just like any other consumer, I have life needs. Our family has life needs, right? I am currently sitting in an office studio that I pay an arm and a leg for every month, and I've realized that that's a silly waste of money. So we are looking for a home with an extra room so I can move all this into that, and we can use that towards more equity and more financial stability for our future. And this is a great option if anybody else is in the same boat. That said, the house that we live in, we would have to sell in order to buy. So this is always a tricky situation. People always ask me how that works, and I have a lot of videos about that, so you can go through my channel and find those. But I'm really going to talk about what this means in this specific market and how it's feeling to be shopping and considering listing my home at probably the worst time of year and in the toughest market that we've seen in the last 20 or so years. So let's talk about what it's like to be a buyer. And of course, things are different in different price ranges. I would consider myself a mid-market level consumer at this point. We are not by any means shopping for a luxury home, but we're also not on our first or starter home. We are kind of somewhere in between. So on the ground as a buyer, here's what I'm seeing. There is a huge issue with limited inventory, and this has been the case for years now. The problem is because of what's happening with interest rates, and also because price tags are not really significantly coming down, it's putting a squeeze on buyers and weeding out so many buyers that it's causing a lot of sellers to not want to sell. The other piece of that is that many sellers who got in the game when interest rates were significantly lower are not too excited, and rightfully so, about abandoning those 1 to 4 or even 5% interest rates in exchange for a 6 to 8% interest range. And that makes a lot of sense because that greatly impacts your affordability, right? So why would you pay more and get less is kind of the scenario that we're all facing as buyers. The other issue with being a buyer, especially in this weird like mid-level marketplace that I am finding myself and my family in, is that as Reno and Sparks have developed, as this whole area has become not just this little city, biggest little city, it really has started to become a greater metropolitan area, which is weird. It's developed very rapidly in the last 10 years, but as that has sort of happened, anything that is geographically what I would consider close, and I mean close to like downtown, central parts of the city like Midtown, or even just central Sparks, anything where I'm gonna say close to where 80 and 395 intersect, has become extremely expensive because of its close proximity and its ease of getting around. You don't have to worry too much about traffic in those places. You can kind of avoid the highways, take some back roads. Anything within that has just become outrageously expensive. And honestly, because a lot of those homes have been around for a long time, a lot of them are much older, and the ones that have not been well maintained or recently updated, or, you know, if they're not a fix and flip, it is feeling a lot like you're spending a lot of money and getting more or less a crappy house. So I totally feel for you guys. I feel for buyers in this market. It's like you're spending $500,000 for a home that looks like crap. Let's just call it what it is, a polished turd. And that doesn't feel good. And then when you couple that with interest rates that are so incredibly high compared to what they were, and I mean, relative to history, they're not even that high yet. I think that they might continue to go up. That's a whole other conversation. But what somebody could afford a year ago or even 6 months ago is a lot less than they can afford now. So what was feeling like a normal house payment now for that same house is going to feel more like a luxury level payment. And people just either can't or don't want to spend that. Let's shift gears and talk about what it feels like to be selling in this market. Now, I have not listed my home. I am kind of waiting to see if there's even anything I might want to buy before I go ahead and put it on the market, because once an offer is accepted, I'm going to have to honor that. And then if there's not a home that I want to move into, well, that's going to be another challenge. But there are homes in my neighborhood for sale. We've looked at all of them, and I mean, they just don't really fit what we need, so that's a whole other conversation. But sellers have their own unique set of challenges in this market. And as I alluded to before, the circumstances and the kind of financial climate that we're in, with interest rates being high, prices being high, inventory being low, it's just creating this scenario where there really are not a lot of buyers. So my fear as a potential seller is that I will put my home on the market and it'll just sit there. And meanwhile, I may find a home that I want to buy, but I won't be able to sell the home that I'm in. I think people in my situation and sellers are going to have to start honoring contingent sales again. If you don't know what that means, it's basically when a buyer writes an offer, but the offer is contingent on the home that they have to selling before they actually will be able to buy the home, which, you know, it could work and it sometimes works out, but in a lot of cases that is a risk for the seller, because if the buyer cannot sell their home, well, then they don't actually have a buyer. They don't have a deal. But with less and less buyers playing ball in the market, it's giving a lot of leverage to buyers. And I do think these are the signs that we are kind of shifting into more of a buyer's market. But buyers are so limited in this market that it's really tough on both sides. As a seller, you also want to be really clear about what your payments are and how much of that is an interest payment, because why would you give up a really low interest rate in exchange for a much higher one? Now, one solution could be to keep the home that you have and you're already paying off and turn it into a rental. The rental market is bananas right now. People really need places to live, so I do think that that's a very sound strategy. It's something we have kind of looked into, but decided that ultimately we just don't want to manage that on top of everything else. But if you are someone who has the bandwidth, by all means, that's a huge opportunity right now. Keep the home you're in with the low interest rate. But the biggest thing you have to know if you are in my position is that you have to know your numbers. You have to know what you're going to get roughly. I mean, you can't always know, but you have to have a really clear picture about your net ROI from the sale of your home in order to know what you can actually afford to buy a new home. That's really it right now. I just kind of wanted to give you guys a market update from the perspective of not only your favorite realtor, but also somebody who is actually on the ground shopping and now potentially listing my home, my own home. So I really feel for you guys. I am looking at the data. I'm watching it like a hawk. If you have questions about the data or either side, buying or selling, I am here for you. I would love to help you navigate in the way that I'm also navigating. And you can book a free call with me to get started. There's a link to do that in the description box below. It's no obligation. It's just an opportunity for us to connect and see if we might be a good fit to work together. And if you haven't already, please make sure that you hit that like and that subscribe button. I put out new videos every single week about the Reno Sparks lifestyle, the Northern Nevada housing market, and of course, all things related to buying and selling real estate. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.